Len being able to present. I'm looking like Len's up here on the screen next to me here. But to have Len presenting on his master's project, as I said with Devin's the other day, you know, like having both Devin and Len in our program has been really awesome. Having two California certified burn bosses as part of our program, and then working with their knowledge base to benefit the communities and organizations that they are working with is a really awesome thing to see come through our Wildland Studies master's program. I also just want to say that, like, in terms of the opportunities of having both of them part of this, I would say it's definitely helped to bridge you know, the opportunities between what we're doing here in Chico and Sonoma County and the North Bay region. I know that's been a huge benefit, and I know that this is just the beginning of those efforts going forward. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Len to present on his project. And the format that we have is that Len presents, then our committee, which is Brian Peterson and myself, as reviewers of Len's project, will ask initial questions, and the audience will ask questions, and then we'll wrap it up. So Len, I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Don. Really appreciate that. Yeah, so good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for being here today. It's great to see a lot of friendly faces and people that I know here, and also super excited to talk to some folks that I maybe haven't met yet, and will, you know, meet in the near term, hopefully. Yeah, so my name is Len. I'm the stewardship specialist for Sonoma County Regional Parks. And for those of you who don't know, my responsibilities include coordinating invasive plant management and land stewardship efforts. My background is actually primarily in botany, so a lot of my work is focused on documenting native and endangered plant species, doing like a lot of fine-scale mapping and habitat assessments. I've also been working with my colleagues, some of which are in the room today, to lead and support the ongoing development of prescribed fire and fuels management programs. And I also provide some level of technical support to ecological restoration projects, among some other roles. I'm here today to present my project, which has a somewhat long-winded title of Engaging the Need of Landscape Level Planning to Increase the Pace and Scale of Prescribed Fire Implementation for Ecological, Cultural, and Community Benefit. But it is primarily focused on the development of a comprehensive prescribed fire management plan for Sonoma Valley Regional Park, which is one of the parks in our regional park system, or just for simplicity's sake, also referring to this document as quote unquote the plan. So yeah. Whoops. So here's an overview of what I plan to talk about today. I'd like to provide some background and context to Sonoma County Regional Parks, touch a little bit on the historic indigenous land use paradigm, talk about our recent fire history, kind of beginning in 2017 to present, though of course goes back a lot longer than that. Sonoma Valley Regional Park itself, our work and management history from about 2018 to present in the post-fire environment. And then I'll talk a bit about the Sonoma Valley Regional Park Prescribed Fire Management Plan itself, the purpose and need, the goals and management outcomes. And it's quite an extensive document, so I probably won't have time to go through all of it, but I did want to provide some snapshots of the plan pages so that folks can kind of get a sense of what that looks like. And then I'll also talk about plan implementation and early results, as we've already had a great opportunity to put this plan to work. So the last thing I'll say before diving into it is this presentation is really kind of more focuses on the why rather than the how. In my process of developing this, I came to realize that fire management planning at this scale is really determined by like the needs of the landscape, and it's often determined by like site-specific features relating to topography, resources present, types and condition of vegetation communities, and the goals and objectives, and the desired outcomes as defined by like the fire practitioner or the agency or whoever's working on a plan that's kind of comprehensive like this. So I felt like it was more worthwhile to talk about the why this is important rather than the nitty-gritty details of all of the components of the plan. However, if folks are interested in seeing, really diving into those details, of which there are many, please feel free to reach out to me, and I'm more than happy to share the plan out, and we can invest and have future conversations about that, for sure. So, quick background: Sonoma County Regional Parks encompasses 60 or more parks. Regional parks is 60 or more parks encompassing more than 18,000 acres of land base. So we have parks that range from eastern Sonoma County, the Sonoma Valley region, all the way out to Bodega Bay on the western edge, and then going north to Gualala, which is essentially the county line of Mendocino, and then all the way down to Carneros, which is essentially the San Pablo Bay. Our parks are incredibly diverse, and they range in size from as small as 1 acre to as large as 4,240 acres. They serve diverse community needs, and including, like, I tend to be natural resources focused, but they of course provide outdoor access, recreation, education programs, etc. So we have regional parks that encompasses many different programmatic areas, all about like engaging the public, getting people outside, providing recreational opportunities, and just supporting like community health and well-being as well. Because of the spread of our park properties, they range a variety of different ecosystems. So they encompass oak woodlands, valley oak savannas, coast redwood forests, mixed hardwood and evergreen forests, serpentine chaparral, annual perennial grasslands, vernal pools, coastal prairies, riparian systems, lakes, wetlands, beaches, dunes, sloughs, and intertidal marshes. And it's just really incredible and also very overwhelming sometimes to have the opportunity and the privilege to work across all these different ecosystems and like try to figure them all out. It's quite a unique challenge to working in a system that spreads such a large geographic area. So since 2013, so importantly, since 2013, Regional Parks has significantly expanded its land base. We've acquired an additional 12,800 acres since 2013, which is more than a 270% increase from the period from the agency's initiation in 1964 to 2013. So we've had a huge ramping up of properties that we're responsible for. Many of these properties have legacy impacts due to historic grazing practices, logging operations, farming, hunting, illegal marijuana cultivation, flood control infrastructure, unmanaged forest diseases, and I won't go through the whole list, but there you can imagine a lot of these are in varying states of environmental neglect. These impacts represent a major deviation from the baseline environmental conditions that they once were, and have resulted in an increased yet operationally unmet demand for proactive restoration and natural resource management across the system. Regardless of these impacts, the lands that are stewarded by regional parks continue to provide essential and irreplaceable ecological services, especially in a rapidly urbanizing region, as the influence of the Bay, like immediate Bay Area, continues to spread north. So it's well known that many of California native tribes are fire-dependent cultures. Present-day Sonoma County overlays several indigenous territorial homelands, which are like often grouped in larger groupings, but we know that there are many different denominations of these tribes that are kind of lumped together. So, but these generally include the Wapo, Coast Miwok, and like Southern Pomo, Dry Creek Pomo, and then like the Cashayo Pomo. But of course, there's many others included in those groups. But really, it's a very culturally rich region. And relating back to regional parks are, the properties that we steward. We have opportunities to engage with all of these tribal entities in different ways, and each of those represents unique relationships that need to be developed. So there's a very complex landscape in terms of the indigenous overlays, or how regional parks overlays all of the different traditional tribal territories of indigenous people in the area. Historically, most people in this room are familiar about this, but with this is, Indigenous people utilize fire for a number of material and non-material purposes, including improving productivity and provisioning services of food, fiber, medicines, and other material goods, maintenance of hunting grounds, harvest of animals, regulating pests and diseases, nutrient cycling, maintenance of travel routes, improving visibility around settlements, fuels management, wildfire safety, ceremonies, spiritual well-being, and among other purposes. Indigenous burning occurs at varying scales, from burning entire landscapes to patch burning to burning of an individual plant, and at varying frequencies. The extent and timing of cultural fire use varies across different ecosystems and habitats and is closely linked to culturally valuable fire-affected resources. There's a famous study by Stevens et al. In 2007 that estimated that during the prehistoric period, approximately 1.8 million hectares, which is about 4.5 million acres or 4.5% of California's or pre-California's wildlands burned annually. Some just general, I wanted to address also some of the limitations of this project specifically as it relates to the Indigenous land use history. So, due to regional parks does have existing co-management relationships with tribal organization or tribal entities within Sonoma County. But due to expressed concerns over the sensitivity of sharing cultural fire practices and cultural resource information, cultural management objectives were actually intentionally not included into the scope of this project. Existing co-management and collaborative agreements between regional parks and our tribal partners could be expanded to address cultural fire and other stewardship goals at Sonoma Valley Regional Park in the future, but these cultural management objectives should be supported in direct collaboration with tribes, protected under shared MOUs, and explored in parallel planning processes that may or may not integrate with elements of this plan. And there's a particular sensitivity around this due to us representing a government agency and the sharing of information. So I just wanted to highlight that we are, as an agency, we are engaging in fire stewardship development with our local tribes, but for the purposes of sensitivity, those are not those objectives. It wouldn't be appropriate to include it in this plan. So a couple other things I just wanted to say about this before moving on. So it's thought that the Indigenous occupants of the Sonoma Valley were subjected to the early impacts of the mission system with the establishment of the Mission San Francisco de Solano in Sonoma, which was established in 1823. It's thought that some of the large Miwok and Wapo settlements in the Sonoma Valley, such as Willikos, was a well-known large settlement, which is actually within line of sight where I'm sitting now of the Sonoma Valley, where some of the first Indigenous people in Sonoma County region to be brought into the mission system, which has generated, lasting impacts to the landscape here, and obviously a lot of longstanding issues relating to the sustained cultural practices within the region. I also wanted to highlight that shortly after California became a state in 1850, its first governor, Peter Burnett, signed into law the Act for the Government and Protection of Indians, and that this act facilitated the forced removal and displacement of Native Californians from their ancestral lands, which legally enabled the capture and involuntary servitude of Indigenous people. And under the provisions of this law, Native people could actually be legally shot for burning. So as a result, practices of cultural burning all but ceased, especially in the Sonoma County region. So obviously all of this relates to removal of Indigenous people coupled with the subsequent settler colonial land uses, exacerbated by state and federal suppression policies, resulted in major transitions in California's ecosystems that are still evident today. So, okay, So without going into too much detail, Sonoma County has experienced a very intense recent history relating to major wildfires. Um, back on October 8th, 2017, both the Tubbs Fire and the Nuns Fire were ignited. And you know, those had major impacts to the region, I think most of which are well known. So I won't go into the detail of those, but as it relates to regional parks, Mark West Regional Park, 100% of its total park area, so 900 acres, were burned in the Tubbs Fire. 100% of Shiloh Ranch Regional Park, 850 acres, were burned. In the Nuns Fire, which started the same night, all 250 acres of Sonoma Valley Regional Park burned. 100%, all 1,200 acres of Calabasas Creek Regional Park, a quarter of Crane Creek Regional Park, and 50% of Hood Mountain Regional Park. Sorry, I wrote 4,240, but it's actually about 2,000 acres of Hood Mountain Regional Park burned. So in this fire event, over 5,000 acres of parklands were impacted by wildfire. In 2019, just 2 short years later, the Kincaid Fire became one of the largest fires in local history. During that fire, Foothill Regional Park, about 95%, so 211 acres of that park burned. Just 1 year later, the LNU Lightning August Complex started and triggered the Myers and Walbridge Fire, which were burning in areas of the county that fire was kind of considered to be, or before then, to be unlikely occurrence, and turned into two major wildfires. No regional parks were impacted, but major parklands that operated by state parks were impacted in those fires. In fact, the Walbridge Fire burned all the way west until it hit the Pacific Ocean. So another massive event in a relatively short time period. And while the LNU August Complex was still burning, the Glass Fire started on Glass Mountain in Napa County, burning east from Napa into Sonoma over the lower Myacamas, burning all 4,000 plus acres of Hood Mountain Regional Park, reburning areas that had previously burned only several years before. So in 4 years, 9,800 acres of regional park lands have been cumulatively impacted by mid to high severity wildfire. And this number represents over half of the agency's total park acreage. And those primary and latent fire impacts are still visible, and we're still dealing with them, working with them 8 years later. I have a few photos that show what the condition of our fire impacted landscapes in our parks look like. So this is from post-fire shots just a couple days after the fire from Kincaid Fire. You can see extremely high oak mortality, very high severity fire. And of course, this park, for those who aren't familiar with it, is very close to neighborhoods and human communities. So you can imagine how scary that must have been. Here's another photo from the Kincaid Fire in 2019, post-fire landscape. Extremely high impact to the oak woodlands there. Here's another shot of Hood Mountain. It's before and after. So this is 2015, the Serpentine Chaparral kind of environment. And of course, we know Serpentine or Chaparral is kind of designed to burn in a stand replacing way, but it is also just like on a larger scale, you can kind of see how the impact or the landscape overall was really impacted by the intensity of these fires. And it's not all like, you know, a total, like there's a silver lining, or like, I don't know, there's a positive ending to like some of these stories. Like, of course, we look at something like that and we're like, oh my God, this landscape is destroyed for forever. But this ridge, which is shown in this previous slide, this is a photo I took in 2023 that shows that this entire ridge line is now covered in what was once a rare wildflower. So the Mount St. Helena Morning Glory just had an absolute explosion. It's absolutely beautiful. It looks like at the time it looked like it had snowed, but it was in the middle of June. So really cool an interesting experience to be able to track some of these responses on the landscape of what just appeared to be an absolutely catastrophic condition, and they're well on their way back to a good recovery. So the project that I've done, that was all just background information about regional parks and our fire history and indigenous cultural history prior, but this project specifically focuses on developing a prescribed fire management for the entirety of Sonoma Valley Regional Park and the adjacent Bouverie Wildflower Preserve, which we kind of consider to be one unit. Sonoma Valley Regional Park, for background information, is a 250-acre park and preserve located squarely in the middle of the Sonoma Valley. It is a critical, even though it's a relatively small parcel, it provides a critical wildlife corridor linkage that links a wildlife corridor in the lower Miacamas to the greater Coast Ranges. That's kind of highlighted here in this image. It also has vernal pools that host natural populations of federally endangered wildflower species, such as this Sonoma sunshine, the Lenosperma bakeri. And then it also contains a segment of the Sonoma Creek watershed in which lots of our local kind of aquatic and beavers are getting reestablished in the Sonoma drainage. And it's all part of that Sonoma Creek watershed. Super cool area. And then Sonoma Valley Regional Park also is immediately adjacent to the town of Glen Ellen, which is one of the towns that experienced really, really severe fire impacts during the 2017 wildfires. So, as previously discussed, the Nuns Fire burned 100% of the park property. The fire impacts were of mixed severity. Mostly good fire at the ground level, but with pockets of standard placing fire in areas with steep topography, ravines, east-facing slopes, and places with heavy fuel loading. Since the fire, we've been working with the landscape to address some of the primary and latent fire impacts that we've observed, and doing it kind of in a piecemeal approach. But this park has been a great testing ground for us to get our prescribed fire program off the ground. In fact, some of our earliest prescribed burns were completed at this park all the way back in 2019 by not myself, but predecessors who were getting our program up and running. So since 2019, we've done 47 acres of broadcast burning here, 50 acres of understory thinning, and we burned over 800 piles of surface materials and fire-killed hazardous fuels accumulations from fire-killed trees and shrubs. These treatments were focused, and they relate to this prescribed fire management plan in that they were designed to enhance control line features and reduce excessive fuel loading in burn unit interiors in an effort to reduce potential impacts when we reintroduce fire to fire-impacted trees. So really a lot of this work is intended to really enhance the beneficial effects of reintroducing a fire on the ground. Here's a couple of photos of what that looks like. This is a photo of our forestry crew burning piles in the oak understory. Just really a beautiful environment to be working in. There was a lot of fire-killed snags, of which we left many for habitat, but had wound up having to reduce some significant amounts of that for personnel safety and also just to reduce fuel loading. But again, you can kind of see some photos of what the landscape looks like for folks who haven't been there. And then just a before and after photo here too that shows really what we're after here. So the photo on the left shows the initial condition. If we were to reintroduce fire into this landscape, we felt and we understood that this would generate damaging effects on the trees that had survived the fire. So in an effort to ready the landscape for broadcast burning, good fire on the ground, we wanted to reduce those fuel loadings and really enhance and protect our surviving trees and not just create a whole mess of additional dead trees and, obviously keeping the ecosystem intact. So this is a big consideration for us and is really leading up to opening up opportunities for us to actually apply more fire on this landscape at a regular interval. A couple other things. So in an opportunity, utilizing this as an opportunity to get native habitat reestablished, we seeded the burn pile scars with native perennial bunchgrass seeds, most of which were collected on site. And then we also saw a lot of really great natural wildflower regeneration. And since we started this project, we've rehabbed over 600 pile scars this way. And I'll just say too that, and now we're starting to use these as an opportunity for blue oak regeneration as well. So we've been collecting blue oak acorns from Sonoma Valley Regional Park, and we've been using these as opportunities for direct seeding in an effort to kind of re-encourage another recruitment of blue oaks to replace the ones that were destroyed in the fire. And I will say that these treatments, this has become like a standard practice for us in our pile burning program. We're not just implementing this here at Sonoma Valley. We're doing this across all of the parks network in which we're doing a bit of pile burn work, and it's been really successful. And Paul Weber, who's in the room, has done a lot of great work on that front. And then I think we got this idea from Devin ages ago, and now everyone's doing this, and it's absolutely awesome. So, and the last thing I'll say too, there's a huge post-fire emergence of broom. So we put in a considerable amount of work with hand crews and other methods to remove that. So really what I'm trying to get at here in introducing you all to this is like we're really looking at holistic landscape level approaches for managing this, like all levels of this for ecosystem health. And yeah, I think all of these also contribute to like they're heavy lifts on our end, but they also contribute to when we put good fire on the ground that we're really optimizing the benefits of when we're able to make that happen. So, okay. So the Sonoma Valley Regional Park Prescribed Fire Management Plan seeks to kind of meet the charge of multiple strategic plans, but really mainly the 2022 California Wildfire and Forest Resilience Task Force strategic plan for expanding the use of beneficial fire, which establishes acreage targets for a wide range of state and federal agencies, California Native American tribes, and non-governmental partners, with the goal of deploying beneficial fire on 400,000 acres annually by 2025. I think we're a bit short of that goal, but it's still worth like that, recognizing all of the efforts that so many people have put in, chipping away at that number. And within this plan, within the strategic plan, there's a lot of really great suggestions and guidelines and principle-based approaches that can guide prescribed fire managers towards like a holistic fire management program, and that is kind of understood in like a collective environment. So this was one of the guiding documents for the development of the prescribed fire management plan, and the prescribed fire management plan, the Sonoma Valley Regional Park prescribed fire management plan, seeks to meet the call that's identified in this plan. We also regional parks at Sonoma County Regional Parks have our own 2023 to 2025 strategic priorities, in which it's identified in Section 3 to increase the pace and scale of prescribed fire, and Section 7 partner with tribes on cultural fire. So this plan addresses goals that are outlined in multiple strategic plans. And like I said, these are really great guiding documents for folks who, are looking to implement more of this work. Strongly recommend taking a look at them, or specifically the state plan for expanding the use of beneficial fire. But you can look at the parks document too if you want. I won't go through this in detail, but I also just want to say that there's a lot of enabling legislation that's come out that's incredibly important background to all of the work that we're doing. That is a lot of people have been putting a ton of work into this. It's really opening the doors to prescribed fire implementation, or just application of beneficial fire statewide. And I see that this is extremely relevant to folks like us in this room who are doing this work on the North Coast. But obviously this applies across the board. A quick rundown: SB 1260 established a certification program for fire bosses. SB 332, which passed in 2021, provides the gross negligence liability protections for prescribed and cultural burns. SB 926, which passed in 2022, established the Prescribed Fire Claims Fund, which supports private burn bosses. And then SB 310, which recently passed in 2024, and this is a very important one, allows the Secretary of Natural Resources to waive compliance with certain state permitting or regulatory requirements in deference to tribal sovereignty regarding cultural burns. And it expands the definition of burn boss to include individuals qualified through specific tribal certifications, and revises the definitions of cultural burn and cultural fire practitioner to apply exclusively to California Native American tribes. And this just like really supports tribal sovereignty and also reinforces cultural burn programs. So it's really great to see all this work that's been done in recent years. It's actually not that long ago that a lot of these initiatives were passed, and a lot of great work has happened since then. So I'm very optimistic about the impact that this legislation will have going into the future. Okay, so the goals and management outcomes of the Prescribed Fire Management Plan were, honestly, I had a lot of goals, but as you can see by this list, and they're actually not all included here. But really, the ultimate outcome that I wanted to generate was to create a standardized template for landscape scale burn planning that could be replicated across all regional park properties. So we're looking at a plan here that identifies opportunities at Sonoma Valley Regional Park, but really this could be expanded, and hope one day that this level of planning can be expanded across all 18,000 acres of regional parklands. The plan hopes to address multiple compliance demands and regulatory frameworks, including conservation easements, smoke management, CEQA, and other regulatory documents. So it's intended to be like a parks document that, yes, checks the burn permit process, but also addresses all of these other kind of bureaucratic demands that are placed on kind of agency-driven prescribed fire management plan or prescribed fire implementation. Aggregate multiple burn plans under a single comprehensive plan instead of chasing individual projects. We can look at the landscape more holistically. Create burn units and subunits that can be burned at varying levels of resource capacity. Expand burn prescription parameters into like kind of cool season burning and definition of burn success in order to exploit more burn windows. Enhance pyre diversity at a landscape scale, so burning under different conditions and different scales and different intensities when and where possible. Establish achievable and adaptive fire management goals and objectives. Streamline planning and implementation, prioritizing, and also figure out where to prioritize prep work, because that can be a very huge lift and potentially very expensive. So if we can really, if we know what we're going after, we can really prioritize funding or capacity for getting like good prep work done ahead of burns. Accelerate the pace and scale of intentional burning region-wide. Overcome barriers and impediments to the application of beneficial fire. Generate a document that can translate across agencies and generations. So I like to think of this as like, if I were to quit tomorrow, somebody could pick up this plan and start implementing it the next day. And then also incorporate this document into master plan documents, thereby institutionalizing beneficial fire as a management tool into the future going forward for agency documents. So that's a huge one, and something we're working really hard on. In order to generate this specific plan, I actually referenced multiple model templates. So the California Standardized Prescribed Fire Plan, the Nature Conservancy's Prescribed Burn Plan template, which is available online, and then the National Wildland Coordinating Group Standards for Prescribed Fire Planning and Implementation. I felt like each of these documents and each of these templates had things that I wanted to include in this plan that would address our needs. So I cherry picked, I I kind of created a Frankenstein version of all of them that I think really meets the needs of what regional parks as an agency is looking for, and also would allow us to navigate the complex regulatory frameworks that we're subjected to relating to prescribed fire. So all of these are great templates. Specifically, the California Standardized Prescribed Fire Plan is a bit like kind of our local standard. It's the one that CAL FIRE and our BCs are used to seeing. But I will say that being creative and looking at, you know, what is maybe missing from some of these is also has been really important in addressing like what how to overcome institutionalization of these documents into regional parks overall. So the plan provides a comprehensive burn plan for 232-acre Sonoma Valley Regional Park and the 25-acre Bouverie Wildflower Preserve, which is adjacent. It addresses key burn plan components such as burn goals, objectives, weather and fuel prescription parameters, smoke management requirements, personnel and equipment needs, scheduling, pre-burn op preparations, communications, safety, yada, yada, yada. The strategy is dividing the park into 4 major units, which are further divided into 17 subunits. And the thought there is we can either string them together if we have the resource capacity, or we can burn them individually as smaller isolated burn units based on resource availability and weather prescription parameters. So it's designed to be flexible. It's designed to be dynamic. And I'll show you some of what that looks like here. So here's an overview. You can see the colors each indicate the major burn units. So this orange color is the Black Canyon unit. The green color is the STC 41. The blue is Bouverie, and the yellow is the Vernal Pool Uplands unit. But as you can see, each unit is subdivided into smaller units that are based on the existing park infrastructure, topography, like parks topography, and yeah, just all the different elements and factors that are kind of offered by the landscape to provide the greatest amount of flexibility and the options for us to jump on burning regardless of the day and the time, and like the weather prescriptions and capacity allocations. So this is a concept that I'm really trying to move forward is, you know, I think we're really faced with a huge need for proactive fire and fuels management across the landscape as a whole, but let's not miss opportunities to jump on small stuff when we can jump on it. And I think that's just, we can get a lot more chasing those little things too. And so I really wanted to open up the opportunity for that here and canonize that in this plan. Here's some of what like the guts of the plan look like. So the individual burn unit profiles, the vegetation types associated, their associated or respective fuel models, whatnot, topo maps, boundaries, fence lines, where the necessarily like constructed hand lines. Most of these were drawn in the field using field GIS technology, and then I also utilized external data sets in order to generate these maps. These maps have also been assembled in a map package that it's available to be utilized like when we're actually doing a burn operation. So all of this stuff is like designed to be super modular. We can pick and pull from this to generate IAPs, satisfy burn plan requirements, and you know, send out georeferenced maps to burn personnel so that they can have them available when they're operating on a burn. So really flexible, again, really just focused on enhancing flexibility and like the modular aspects of this plan as well. Yeah, more of what that looks like. Some other just kind of technical elements of the plan that, you know, these are just snapshots of individual pages, but they show representative fuel types and conditions, the vegetation and fuels mapping using LiDAR data and narrative descriptions, permit needs, unit access, major access points, you name it. I tried really hard to be super comprehensive about just having all the information we would ever need about the single park unit included in one plan so that it can provide a valuable reference for maybe somebody who's responding to a fire or people who are maybe not as familiar as the site. So it's a one-stop shop intended to be that way. So we're already putting this burn plan to work. Already 6 of the 17 subunits were burned in 2024. Conditions permitting, at least 6 more are projected to be implemented in 2025, one in the coming weeks or months, I guess. This document was utilized to satisfy conservation easement stipulations that were part of the park property. It's a little confusing and bureaucratic, but that actually enabled us to expand the potential use of beneficial fire at Sonoma Valley Regional Park to additionally previously prohibited areas within the park area. So it's satisfying the elements in this burn plan are satisfying additional kind of regulatory and permitting needs. And we're already discussing the expanded use of this framework to 4 additional regional park properties, and with the intention of ultimately incorporating them into the master plan. So yeah, these documents will ultimately become integrated into the long-term management goals for hopefully many park properties across the system as we're able to get to them. So I'll end just by showing that this is a photo of a lupin bloom. So this is Lupinus nanus of a burn that we did that relates to this burn plan. It's actually one of the Bouverie units. There's just like a absolutely spectacular wildflower bloom following that burn. So it's just like a really encouraging sign that we're on the right track here, doing great work, and that just we're already seeing the like really magnificent and positive benefits to applying some of the work here at Sonoma Valley. So, and then here's that same unit, black, just several months earlier. So that's what I have. Feel free. Again, I just want to make the offer. Wasn't able to address all the elements of the burn plan here, but please, if you want to have a look at it, if you want to talk more about it, please don't hesitate to reach out to me direct, and I'd be happy to share out more details on that. So thanks, everyone.
Nice job, Len.
Awesome. So we'll turn it over to questions now. We'll begin with Brian asking questions. And then when Brian's done, then I'll ask a few, and then we'll turn it over to the audience.
Great. Well, first off, Len, really great work, great presentation. But yeah, the work itself is just really phenomenal. And like I said, at Devon's a couple days ago, it's really a huge benefit to the greater community. And I think just a testament to the program up there, this is clearly written by a practitioner who's going to use this. And that's just a really great way for our community to be going, is having that kind of practitioner creation of these plans are going to make them really useful. It's such a relief to see something that looks like it's going to be super useful and user friendly and makes sense. And writing all that flexibility in there is super awesome. You know, again, like with Devon's, I don't have any real big technical questions about the burn plan. And sorry, Len, if this puts you on the spot a little bit, but I really did also appreciate how you laid out the history in the written portion of this work of our area and how that relates to legislation and stuff like that too. So you don't have to have an answer for this. So I'm putting you on the spot because it wasn't a history project, but I was just wondering, through that, putting that all together, was there anything that really stood out to you that you learned by putting that together, or did you feel like, was that like a really useful practice for you as well, or was it something I enjoyed? And did anything pop out at you?
Yeah, are you talking specifically about the history of legislation that's passed, or just like the general land use history overall?
I think more, Len, I'm asking about the legislation, but also how it relates to how you've seen the progress from kind of no fire in Sonoma to fire being used by quite a few different entities now. And I guess the real question I have is, did it point you in any direction in the future, you know, like about important things that need to happen, like more burn plans like this, more shared resources, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think So one thing I didn't mention is I actually did an extensive literature review for this project. And sorry, Don and Brian, that you had to read through so many pages of that. But I think part of that is, I've reviewed approximately 200 documents that have been generated for like by fire practitioners, fire researchers, fire ecologists, and just like, general like land management and like, philosophers and stuff like that, or like, people working more in social sciences and trying to sleuth through all that information and make all of the connections. And I think the most interesting and most fascinating part of that process for me was just looking at where all of those can overlap. I think it it's a little cliche, but like thinking about all of this as like an ecosystem, right? Like we can promote ecological management goals while also promoting like fire management goals or fuels management goals and cultural management goals, and just looking for all like where all of those points of intersection are, I think are just has been the most interesting investigations like for me. And like there's so many that I was able to kind of you know dig out of the mud and kind of like slap together and into this narrative form. And I for me, that's just been like one of my biggest interests relating to prescribed fire. Again, my background is mostly in botany, coming at this through like more of like a botanical lens, but really looking at how this speaks to like the narrative of like where we are today, and how we're all a part of that, and whether we want to be or not. And I don't know. That's a really nebulous answer to that question, but maybe it was also a very nebulous question. But I think, just just like having the chance to explore all those things side by side, and then look for comparisons and parallels, and like looking, again, like where the legislation supports that, and like, I mean, it's all related, and I think that's the super cool thing about firework, really.
Yeah, great, Len. Thank you so much. And it was a nebulous question. I apologize for that. And one really quick question I have too is, did it, with some of the times these bigger management plans, and then there's some kind of like tension with getting a burn plan to CAL FIRE that's really specific. And you've already used this management plan. And how did that feel with the CAL FIRE using this plan as like a burn plan that you can kind of just like, do you just give it to him? Do you keep sending it to him every burn? Has that been worked out yet? Or are you still in mid stride on kind of figuring that relationship out with a programmatic burn plan like this?
Yeah, I think we're figuring it out. So we sent this one specifically to our local Sonoma Valley battalion chief, and didn't get it kicked back to us for any reason. Also generated an IEP directly out of this burn plan document that I think satisfied the needs of what they were looking for. Really like, so we haven't had any pushback on this format with this direct like BC that we're working with here. However, I could, as we continue to expand the use of this format across like other park properties, it kind of remains to be seen whether it will be accepted or not by the different BCs within their different districts. It still does meet all of the requirements of the California Standardized Burn Plan. It contains all of those elements. It's just formatted slightly differently to contain additional background information. But I would like to talk to other BCs in the region to just kind of get their sense as before we really start putting a ton of work into developing these things and utilizing them more, what their feelings would be about that. Because again, this document doesn't just satisfy its intended use is not just to satisfy the CAL FIRE permitting process, but rather to satisfy multiple and many bureaucratic frameworks that are. It would hopefully it allows us to navigate more than just the CAL FIRE permitting process. So that's what we had in mind, or that's what I had in mind as we were developing this.
Yeah, that's super awesome. I mean, that's just again so thoughtful and clearly being designed and built by someone who's has this depth of experience. So I appreciate that. Very much. Don, I think that's all I had.
Sorry, I had it on mute. Yeah, great job. Really awesome. And this is a fantastic and mesmerizing photo to look at. really nice outcome from your results. One thing I was like, I guess maybe I didn't pick it up when I read through your written materials, was that you have Lennisparma bakeri on this preserve. And it took me back to my early career working for U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and I'm kind of wondering, knowing also that you're a plant guy, if there's any intent to look at the relationship between a rare plant like Blennisperma bakeri and obviously this is not part of your planning thing, but like in terms of the monitoring of the effectiveness of your burns, how Blennisperma bakeri responds to fire.
Yeah. I mean, really, like. Oh, sorry. Do you mind hitting the mute button? Yeah. I'll just say that actually was one of my primary interests as I was thinking about going to grad school, was looking at the associations between fire and vernal pool habitats, and specifically vernal pool species. And I found like very limited information relating to that. Like people have mostly just done opportunistic studies. I did do a review of the literature, or what literature I could find relating to the fire ecology of vernal pools, and it is as limited as I thought, but there are some really, really cool things that folks have observed. One thing we are burning pretty much right up to the edge of the vernal pool. We have yet to intentionally burn through the pool in the multiple rounds of prescribed fires that we've done. I don't know, Brian might have some perspective on what they're doing on the ACR side, but are they avoiding? Do you know? Anyway.
We completely excluded it, which was super silly. Yeah.
Yeah.
We had to.
But I would love to explore those relationships more and have the opportunity to do so. The vernal pools are being monitored somewhat intensively by multiple partners, including ourselves. But I will say that in the 2017 fires, they burned right through that vernal pool, and we're still seeing Blennisperma bakeri. So I think it would be worthwhile to do some experimental burning within the pools at appropriate times. Of course, using really informed decision making there. But I would love to see. I would love to do, and I would love to see more work being done on that front, because it's super fascinating. I'll also mention too that we do have an area in which we're managing for the Sebastopol metafoam, Limnanthes vinculans, over close to the city of Sebastopol. We've been mostly grazing the property to manage the thatch loading, but it's been coming up in conversations this year whether we want to start doing a rotation of grazing and then rest and then burning. So I think we're going to start exploring that, at least in conversation, and hopefully in application in the near future as an agency. So we'll keep you posted for sure.
That's excellent. I mean, these are things that there are definitely areas personally where like research in vernal pools and fire, I think is an important thing. Prior to my time at Chico, and still while at Fish and Wildlife Service, there were a number of people at Chico State, particularly in the biology department, who were doing research on vernal pools. And as you point out, but none of them had an agenda of looking at the relationship of fire. And I look at vernal pools as being like a grassland ecosystem that would have had fire as part of it. And looking at the Sonoma or Santa Rosa Plain as an example, like a lot of the areas that have, particularly the state-owned lands, Department of Fish and Wildlife lands, just the buildup of thatch because of the lack of stewardship in these places. So it's really important, to think about what opportunities there are, and also recognizing that some of those species that occur in these places are also cultural. So there might be opportunities to link like indigenous stewardship to that. And then the other side of that is that, because of the rare species, not certain under current federal conditions, but, in the endangered species recovery side of it, it may be a source of funding for applying fire into these areas, and also doing the research on them too. So just point that out. Yeah. So I guess the next, kind of thing that I'll mention, because obviously, on a small preserve, you face a lot of challenges. One, in terms of like neighborhood impacts and those sorts of things, but it's also, kind of a huge opportunity, as I like to think about, like the billboard advertising of prescribed fire, knowing the challenges that you face there in the region. what sorts of public outreach and education you're able to do in terms of, like this work that you're doing there. So yeah, just kind of curious to know what you have there.
Yeah, I really appreciate that question, and I actually thought to address that in this presentation, but I was trying to pack a lot of stuff in there, so I decided to leave it out. So I'm really glad you asked. And it's a huge topic of conversation for us at regional parks. I really like that you said the word billboard. That's actually the same word that I use when we're doing prescribed fire projects. I think that's one of the greatest benefits to burning on public lands that are publicly accessible. Is that we get to really engage with partners, like whether they like it or the public, whether they like it or not. So we used to close parks and close trails when we were doing prescribed fire projects when we were first starting out, because we were testing the waters. We were seeing how people would react. We realized slowly over time that most people don't really have a thought one way or the other about it, interestingly. So now we're really taking this as really leaning into the opportunities of keeping parks wide open while we're doing prescribed burning, unless it's really a matter of safety. But we don't really close anything at all. When we're doing prescribed burns or pile burning, people will be walking, 10 feet from a burn pile, and our folks will be working right there and available to answer any questions that person might have, or concerns, or just like a general, hey, thumbs up, like that's super cool that you guys are doing this. I will say too that yeah, so we have we're now, whether we're just like actually there presently available to answer questions, we've also developed a whole system of signage on sandwich boards that are mobile, so that in the time leading up to a fire, people have information knowing that we're going to start implementing a project. We also have signage that addresses the landscape condition after a prescribed fire, that talks about, like the why we're doing it, the positive beneficial effects of fire. So we also have like this kind of mobile public outreach like format that we're kind of moving around with us as we implement projects. We're also engaging in social media, reaching folks through Facebook, promoting through other social media platforms, which actually has a surprising amount of reach considering how many people follow regional parks. And just doing lots of other like great outreach. We have a community engagement division, which is now leading like fire walks. They're bringing out school-aged children to watch us perform work. So yeah, again, just really like super excited about this opportunity to engage with the public on this front in this venue. But I also want to acknowledge that we probably wouldn't be able to do this if it wasn't for all the great work that like Fire Forward and ACR had been doing, like the community outreach work that had been going on for years before, that kind of got the community ready to see smoke columns coming up in their backyards. And then of course, just shout out to Devin too for the work up at Pepperwood on the Learn and Burn days, getting just people out all the time, engaging in fire directly. And we all hang out, we all work together on these projects. And I think it's just, I think we all understand the value of like what each of these venues is kind of promoting in terms of those outreach components, and just really getting like people hanging out and like walking right next to burning stuff and feeling okay about it. So yeah.
Excellent. Thanks for that response. Part of that came because of conversations yesterday with the Central Coast PBA, Jared Childress, who I think is a CARX as well, talking about how Wilder Ranch there in Santa Cruz, has been burning for like 30 years, and how they're so normalized in the community in terms of the burning that people just basically are like recreating, riding their mountain bikes by, not even snapping a picture of the burns. I think that's really a good case in point in terms of like the opportunities that exist regionally around, bringing good fire back into these spaces and then just making it acceptable again. So thanks. I'm going to turn it over to audience just to ask if there's any questions. Folks online, just raise your hand if you're going to ask a question. And then I don't know if Gary or Ben have anything to ask. Ben doesn't have anything, Gary, I don't think, maybe.
I'll ask a quick one. Just when is the next time you're implementing this thing that you made?
We're hoping to get one spring burn done this season in June, and then I'd like to start really chipping away at these units this fall. We put in a ton of prep work. They're ready to go. They're just ripe for burning. So whether that's done as part of a Trex or whether it's done in-house or addressed in a bunch of different ways, again, really like trying to open up the flexibility and the options here. But yeah, I think this year and going into the winter season, jumping on those cool weather windows as they arise, those winter burn windows, and then just again also expanding these to other parks and really trying to get that going in other parks of like similar size and complexity. So
Awesome.
See,
Devin.
Great presentation, Len. Thank you. So I have two kind of questions. One of them is your document itself is actually really beautiful. It looks like it's ready for like publication, just because you got the nice cover and just it all is aesthetically pleasing as well as having great information. Is that planned on being shared with the public as something like a regional park publication kind of thing? And then I'll let you talk in a second. My second question is, after doing like individual burn plan units and then kind of this more property-wide programmatic burn plan, what is like the reality of you kind of, or other folks at regional parks creating similar type programmatic burn plans for your other properties? And do you see that happening in the near term or kind of like a slow grind over time?
Yeah. I'll answer the second question first, I think. So we are hoping to utilize this as a template across our entire parks network. But all of our parks have super variable needs and are of varying scales and are of like, some are burned, some are not burned, in a wildfire scenario, and some have had like active management, some haven't. So it is like a meticulous process in terms of identifying a very specially tailored need for that's specific to each park property, and of course the vegetation communities and the ecosystems contained within. So I do think that it will be a slow progressive process in terms of getting these rolled out for each park property in ways that are actually meaningful too. But yeah, but we already have, I think I mentioned in my presentation, we have about 4 parks outlined already that we're planning on moving this template forward with. And those are scaled up from this Sonoma Valley plan. So that includes like Mark West Regional Park, which you're familiar with, Carrington Coast Ranch Regional Park, which is mostly coastal prairie, and a couple others like Helen Putnam and places that we're looking at across like just the whole county spread. So I think we have a prioritization of where we want to start. Who knows? A lot of us are collectively working on this now. Paul is also a CARX in the room here, and we'll be working together. And then also Lulu, who's on this call, and some of my other colleagues will be working on this as a division collectively in order to ease the burden of like generating a document of this scale. So that answers that question. In terms of the display of the plan, let you in on a trade secret. Actually, my partner solely has a background in graphic design. So when I had the project looking kind of like crap, and she was like, "Oh, I can totally doctor this up for you and make it look really nice." So full credit to her to making it look like a really appealing thing. In terms of it being published as a document, like a public facing document, I don't think it will be separately, but all of regional parks master plans, I believe, I could be wrong about this, are public documents. So once it gets appended or directly attached to a master plan, it will become available to the public. Yeah.
That's great. I think there's an opportunity there for Soli to have like some consulting with graduate studies here at Chico State for polishing up people's project appearances, right?
I'll suggest it to her.
Yeah. Go ahead. Next question.
Yeah, so of all of our parks with equivalent resources and equivalent wildfire history, how did you land on starting with Sonoma Valley for this project?
Yeah. that's great. Snow Valley has been kind of, I think I maybe suggested this a little bit, but it's kind of been a little bit of a kiddie pool for us with most of our prescribed fire projects. So we tried our, first prescribed burns there. We did some of our first like shaded field break and pile burn projects. So it felt like, but it's also had a lot of, well, there's a lot of ways to like reasons why, but that to me felt like there was already a lot of momentum building. There was already a lot of stuff going on at this park property that I felt was generating enough like movement that we could just keep it running. So a lot of the previous work had already greased the wheels there. I will also just say too, like there's a lot of other collaborators, people that we partner with on prescribed fire or like burning projects that are working immediately adjacent to Sonoma Valley Regional Park. So there's the ACR property, Bouverie Preserve immediately across. There's the Sonoma Land Trust property right next to that. And then on the east side, we've got Naftali with state parks working in Jack London State Park. And then we actually have like adjacent, due to their recent acquisition, we have like adjacent boundaries now, and I think CAL FIRE is even acquiring some land in there. So there's all of our collaborators are working on proactive fire management in that region already, and I think it just felt really right to me to like kind of throw in on that work too. One metric that I didn't mention but I had in my notes is, and I think it's actually really important to say, was that I did find in my research that treatments on as little as 15 to 25% of a landscape have been found to substantially modulate fire behavior. If we're looking at a super fire impacted region and all of the work that's already being done, a small amount or like a relatively small amount of work can have a massive impact in terms of the response or like the reaction in the next wildfire scenario when it arises. So I think it was part strategic, it was part collaborative, it was part just because it was already happening and I saw an opportunity there. And I think there was another reason, but I lost it. But yeah, lots of great reasons to start there. And I think, just really, really, I want to just shout out, again, the work that everyone has been, it's not just us, it's like everybody is putting in a ton of work into that area. And Glen Ellen, it burned, like, they're still rebuilding. And I do think that there is some responsibility to that community, knowing that, that wildfires tend to move from east to west through that corridor, that Sonoma Valley Regional Park may ultimately be one of the last lines of defense before fire moves into that town again in the next wildfire. So yeah, lots of reasons there.
Really good. Are there any other questions?
I'll say something.
Go for
it. Thank you, Len. Great presentation and just massive congratulations. This is a huge body of work that you've completed and such a value add. I work for Regional Parks with Len as well. Such a value add to our program that you've developed this template that's going to be applicable to so many of our other parks, and just the knowledge that you've gained through going through this program and developing this specific burn plan is going to be so relevant and so valuable for us moving forward, I think. I'm curious if you think the template could be utilized by other public agencies that are doing like work, or is it just so specific to our specific needs at Sonoma County Regional Parks? Have you shared it with people like Naftali at state parks or others in the field? And do you think there is, any possibility there?
Yeah, it's hard. It's a hard thing to know. I mean, I think that, with the state, they have like their own really rigorous processes that they have to go through in order to get stuff through. So I'm not sure if it would translate that well to stateside. I think that hopefully folks can have a look at this, and if they're inspired by it, or if they want to co-opt like parts of it, they're in terms of like the structure, they're more than welcome to. I don't care. I think it'd be great to just see more landscape level planning in the future. I think it's really, all of our partners, whether, it's different for everyone, right? Nonprofit, like other agency partners at a similar level, like local agency or state, are going to have different requirements. So I think whatever, yeah, it's hard to, I think what I would be happy if this document inspired like this, some level of like similar planning effort within our partner organizations or beyond, whatever. But I wouldn't expect it necessarily to translate to other organizations, especially since I think that the needs are just so different for everyone. And a lot of this has been specifically tailored to our needs, just based on my 10 years of experience working at the organization.
All right. Well, it doesn't seem like there are other questions. Normally, as I said during Devin's presentation, at this point, the committee would have a conversation. But being that we're remote here, we won't have that conversation. But congratulations. Yes, awesome. Another round of applause. All right. And we'll look forward to having you submit. And I guess one question for you, Len, are you planning to walk during the ceremony next, 2 weeks from now, I guess, right?
I hope, I mean, I wasn't necessarily planning on it, but that's not to say I don't want to hang out with y'all, but yeah, I probably won't be attending.
Yeah, no, it's just a curiosity for me. It's been a number of years since I've had students that have participated in it, and Gary and I were talking about this actually the other day. That if I knew folks were going to go to the ceremony, I would suit up and go over there to celebrate with you. But so that's why I asked.
You're off the hook.
You're off the hook. I'm off the hook. That's awesome.
We're all off the hook. That's great.
But definitely want to maintain connection, and if there's opportunities for us to collaborate on things, this is also true for Devin, going and working with you guys and Brian. I just think it's awesome to be able to keep this going and the synergies going with amongst ourselves and new folks that may come into the system. So again, congratulations, and we'll get that paperwork in. And yeah, go ahead and hit send on your project.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Don. And thank you everybody for coming today. And I also really wanted to echo what you said, Don, that I think that I'm just super, super excited to have had the opportunity to interact with the folks at BSER and like with Chico. And I just see so many parallels between like what folks are working on down here and what you all are working on up there. And I think one of the biggest, most exciting elements of my participation in this program is to have like been part of bridging the gap between two super rad communities. And I'm really looking forward to a future in which like we're all working together more frequently and seeing each other more often, because I think we're really kind of kindred spirits or kindred communities here. So thank you all for the opportunity. And yeah, it's just been fantastic to meet and interact with you all. So thanks.
Awesome. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and hit the leave button here, and you all enjoy the rest of your afternoons. Thanks again. Bye.
Good job, Len.
Thanks.